Right, we are live and it is 4 o'clock. Welcome everybody to our Wellbeing and Mental Health panel during this absolutely extraordinary time we are going through worldwide with coronavirus. So before we go into the full kind of discussion and conversation, which will be very relaxed, I'd just like every panelist to introduce themselves. So I've got you on the screen in a tile formation, so I'll just go down the tile formation as I can see you. So if we can start with you, Karen, would you like to introduce yourself, say a bit about what you do, who you are, and where in the world you are, and then maybe share an opening bit of supportive advice for either parents, teachers, or something that they can do for their children. Oh, hang on, Karen.
Wait, okay, now am I good? Okay.
Yeah.
So hi, everybody. My name is Karen Bruch-Feldman, and what I just demonstrated, one of the things I think you definitely need in this time is flexibility, for sure. And I'm a psychologist. I work with kids. I have a private practice, and I'm coming from New York, which is now classified as one of the epicenters of coronavirus. So I definitely feel like we've been really touched by this. One thing I would share, one of the things I actually just saw in Dr. Kessler shared something, I'm going to share something that he shared, which is basically to name it is to tame it. So I think what we're doing today by talking about it is really one of the best things we can do to sort of help people.
Thank you very much, Karen, and a great piece of opening advice there. And I'll move on to Kelly, if you'd like to do the same thing, please. Hello, Kelly.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelly Hannigan and I'm the Wellbeing Leader at Leslie Heath Primary School and also the Wellbeing Associate for the Primary First Trust. I firstly want to say a huge well done for everyone in coming together today. This is such a vital conversation that we're having, and I'm hoping that we can reach out to people to spread a sense of calm and focus at this time, and for us to think about what can we focus on that we can control rather than what we can't. And we must remember that our young people and our children will take away the memories of how they felt during this time, not necessarily what they've done or what we've provided them. So I'm looking forward to the big conversation today.
Thank you very much, Kelly. And I'll move on to Anna.
Hi, everybody. Really glad to be here. And thank you so much, Fred, for putting this on. It's a superb event. I'm a specialist community public health nurse. My speciality is occupational health. So I advise businesses on all to do with health and well-being of their employees. I'm also a resilience trainer, and I'm a mum of a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old who should have been doing GCSEs and A-levels. I think my tip is focusing on that kind of age, 16 to 18-year-olds, and it's about constructing a framework, a sense of meaning and purpose that leads their activities each day. So this is different from a timetable framework. This is about something that they can really be excited about and be enthused and get from. Thank you very much for inviting me onto it.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, Anna. And Adele.
Hello, my name's Adele Bates. I'm a behaviour and education specialist, which means I work specifically with students with behavioural needs, social, emotional, mental health needs. So I work part-time in a school, which we are still in some kind of skeleton-y way-ish, attempting in a very strange way doing. And I think the piece that's sitting with me at this second is that we should all have a chance to go there. My temporary housemate and I have just done some operatic warbles, but also going back to our kids, and I'm sure we'll talk about homeschooling in a bit, but not feeling the pressure to get into the work straight away. We've got to take time to go there.
I like that. That's a very good technical term, and I think it really sums up how a lot of us feel at the moment. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Kate.
Hi, I'm Kate McAllister, and I'm coming to you from Dominican Republic. I came here on a research project into world schooling, funnily enough, and now I am stuck here homeschooling with my 7-year-old. My background is in self-directed learning, so I'm here to support parents and teachers with self-directed learning projects and how to make them successful. And I also train volunteers who go to work in crisis situations like refugee camps. And so one of the things that I do is helping people to magic something out of nothing. So when you find yourself thrown into an environment where nothing is how it's supposed to be, how can you create some sense of normality, some sense of pattern, and lay down anchors so that you can find your way back to feeling safe and calm when everything around you is feeling very upside down? So hopefully I'll find some tips that will be of value today.
Thank you very much, Kate. And already, I think, just having the little introduction from everybody, there's so much really useful expertise in the virtual room today, which is fantastic. And thank you all for being here. I'll just introduce myself very briefly. So I'm Frederico Roberts. I am a speaker, trainer and author. Previously, I was a teacher. My work now is all around mental health and well-being, positive education, all rooted in positive psychology, and linked to that also supporting children's development of character strengths and their understanding of how using those can support well-being. Very much tapping into all of the resources that I know of through my work, for my personal life as well at the moment. Adele, you saying, you know, the kind of, absolutely, you know, I think I spent much of Sunday and Monday crying, and I think we'll all go through time that, you know, and I'm actually really grateful for every opportunity to actually do real work like this and something meaningful to help other people, because it does give, as Kate was saying, you know, that structure, and it's actually bringing some kind of normality back, even though in a different way. So that's really, really useful. And I think it's really important to say to everybody listening today that, you know, just because we work in well-being and we know a lot of this stuff about how to look after ourselves, we're all in the same boat here, and we're kind of all living through it at the moment in all of our different ways. And so what we're doing is really trying to share the best things that we know of, that we know of work, research that's been done, that we know through experience, through our own work, etc. So before we start talking really about the mental health and well-being aspects, I just wanted, as we are lucky to have a public health nurse in the room, I just wanted to go briefly to Anna, because there is a lot of confusion out there. Certainly in the UK, we're getting different messages coming out every day with new words that nobody's ever heard of, and these seem to be spreading around the world at different rates. But there is a lot of confusion about what things like self-isolating, social distancing, and now the latest one, shielding, mean. So Anna, would you like to just give us a little bit of an explanation, please?
Yeah, I most certainly would. And it's, you know, oh yes, I'm a health professional, but all this stuff is coming to us very new as well. I mean, literally, I'm getting sort of Public Health England guidance is coming through probably about literally every 5 minutes into my email. So that's the first thing to say, don't expect yourselves to keep up to date. It's quite impossible. Anyway, so the first term that we're going to talk about is probably the most significant term, which is about shielding. This is for the people who are most vulnerable. They are currently being identified right now by Public Health England and also the medical specialities. They will be most vulnerable either because of diagnosed health conditions or treatments or medications that they could be on. The guidance for them is that they must stay at home for 12 weeks. The next term that we're going to be looking at is social distancing, and almost this term has been sort of overtaken by the announcement yesterday from Boris, which was, we've got to stay at home. So that overrides any social distancing now. Stay at home. You must only leave your house if it's for absolute essentials. If when you do leave your house, only 2 of you from your household should come out, you must remain with social distancing. So in the UK, which is different from other countries, it's 2 meters. In other countries, such as Italy, it's just 1 meter. In actual fact, the World Health Organization is 1 meter. I don't know why. The UK have decided on it being 2 meters, so that's what we must be doing. Now, the social distancing actually subdivides further into those people who we class as higher risk. They could be considered higher risk because of certain medical conditions or certain treatments that they're on. And it's for them, they need to be doing stringent social distancing. And then there's this term self-isolating. And this is the term that is getting confused with the social distancing. Self-isolating is only if you've got the COVID-19 symptoms of a new constant cough or a fever. Fever is 2 temperatures that I've seen, that's 37.5 or 37.8. If you have either of those symptoms, you need to be self-isolating for 7 days. If you have people living with you, they must self-isolate for 14 days. Doesn't matter whether they have symptoms at the moment or not. If they don't have symptoms, sorry, it does matter if they do have symptoms or not. They must self-isolate for 14 days. Now, in that period of time, if they get symptoms, then they actually reduce that to 7 days. Okay. Yeah, I can't explain why, but I'll be going on and on.
So there's a really useful little chart of that around, isn't there? That's quite useful by the World Health Organization.
So if you have the COVID-19 symptoms, you self-isolate for 7 days. Household members who don't have the symptoms self-isolate for 14 days. If they do get symptoms, they self-isolate for 7 days.
Any wonder that people are getting confused. But thank you so much for that.
So really, just ask and ask and ask and ask.
Right. Yeah, and I think one thing that's worth just mentioning, and you know, we're not going to make the whole session about the medical practicalities, but one thing more than ever, I think that when things are doing the round on social media and stuff, to really check the sources of that information. And in terms of guidance and advice, wherever you are in the world, I would say, you know, look at your own government's website, look at your own health services website, and if in doubt, look at the World Health Organization's website and see what they're saying as well. And be very cautious, because I've seen some really interesting things, as I'm sure you all have, about what weird and wonderful things might cure or stop the virus and this and that and the other. So it's being very cautious about where to get the information. So with that in mind, we're going to stop talking about medical information. We've kind of shared the terminology, but thank you so much for that, Anna, because I know there is a lot of confusion. I'd like to mention as well, we've got a message from a friend of mine. Actually, we've got an audience member in the Netherlands and possibly a few of his colleagues as well, Patrick van Dies. Thank you very much for joining us, Patrick. Hello. So if anybody does want to message us or ask questions, if you're watching via YouTube, you can type messages in the live chat box, and if you see me going off like that to the side, I'm looking at the screen to my side to respond to or type in little messages and have what people are saying. And if you are on Twitter, now we're not streaming to Twitter, but if you're a Twitter user and you're watching us and you want to ask us questions, Adele has very kindly offered to
on it. I've just been I'm just been quoting a few things that's already been said as well, so just keep watching that hashtag in Twitter and I'll be looking for your questions.
Wonderful, fantastic. And so Adele, if you're seeing questions pop up that we need to address, just let me know and ask the question, and we'll put those to the panel. The hashtag is quite a big mouthful to say, so I have typed it into the chat box, so you can hopefully see it on there if you want to use the hashtag on Twitter. But it is hashtag COVID-19 MHWB panel. So COVID-19 for the disease, MHWB for mental health and well-being, and the panel, which is what we are. So hashtag COVID-19 MHWB panel if you want to ask your questions or give us comments on Twitter, and Adele will be looking out for those. So looking at some of the things that we can share then, a couple of things that have been mentioned that I think are quite important to cover quite early on. A couple of you have talked about bringing some kind of normality and routine back into our lives. Now, I know, Kate, you talked about it in terms of magic something out of nothing. And was it you, Anna, that talked about routine as well?
Yeah, I talked about it from the older age group perspective, you know, your older teenager, and looking at really trying to get a sort of sense of meaning out of this period of time. So, for instance, you know, looking at, there's a number of sort of online courses that they could be considering. You know, maybe they've got some career ideas anyway. Maybe your 16-year-olds have some ideas as to any vocational qualifications or A-levels that they were doing, and they could actually be doing some sort of online courses. So that's sort of, it's sort of giving them sense, because they're positioning themselves further ahead. You know, they're thinking, actually, this time is going to benefit me in longer, you know, in a few years' time. And hopefully having that real sense of purpose and meaning is then going to help them to get up in the morning and help them then to start to have a skeleton structure on which they can position, you know, their friends and exercise and social media and all that other stuff that they absolutely do want to do.
Thank you very much. That's really useful. Yeah. Sorry.
I was just going to add something to that. So I work mainly with secondary school age as well. And I think, going on from what you've said, Anna, the difficulty that my pupils seem to be having is because of the nature of the British education system that's very content heavy, very spoon feedy.
Yeah.
I've seen them kind of going, what? I've got to independent, what? I've got to think, I've got to, you know, and there's this whole kind of, they're not quite used to that. And I found what's quite helpful at the moment is just to kind of help them make that transition from, here's what you need to be revising, here's what you need to be revising, to, okay, so what do you think about your A-levels and what might be useful?
Absolutely.
There's quite a distance there. I'm imagining Kate's probably, this is kind of Kate's area, I think.
Well, I was just going to say that, and underneath all of those cognitive things is an emotional response.
Yeah.
And so globally, we are experiencing a crisis, which means that our autonomic nervous systems are freaking out on us. They've gone into fight or flight, but we can't run and we can't fight it. We're stuck. So that's really challenging for us on a physical level. Or we've frozen, we've gone into rabbit in the headlights. I can't feed myself knowledge. I don't know where to start. Everything looks like a blank piece of paper. I don't want to make a mistake. So if I just stay still and do nothing, that's where I'll be safe.
Yeah.
So our job as the adults in the household or the adults in the school is first and foremost to bring that sense of safety back. So I think it was Kelly who said earlier about how we feel. There's a lovely quote by Maya Angelou, which is, that she realized that people will forget what you said and they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So our job as adults, first and foremost, is to try and make the young people around us feel safe. So talking about what's going on is really important. Explaining that we all feel a little bit at sea. This is new for everybody. And we're going to gradually work our way back to a new normal. The old normal is not coming back anytime soon, but we can gradually build our way into a new normal. And so beginning with topping and tailing your day with a routine that you know works. So whether it's having the same breakfast every day in the same place at the same time, and it might wobble after that. They might wander off and go back into, I don't know what to do, driving you nuts, asking you questions, but finish the day with either a meal at the same time or a television show that you watch together or a bedtime story for your little ones, and then slowly work your way backwards towards the middle. So add in something new each day that's recognizable, that gives you a safe feeling, and slowly, slowly, slowly work your way back towards the scariest stuff, which is self-directed learning projects on whatever you like, as long as it's a value. That's massive for most people to wrap their heads around. So that would be my advice. Start at the beginning and the end and gradually work your way back in.
Thank you very much for that. And I'll come to you, Kelly, next. And I just wanted to say we've got a question from Melissa, which actually really feeds into this. She was saying, what can schools do right now to support the mental health of their students, thinking especially of secondary schools? I know Kelly, you're in a primary school, but I think a lot of this is, you know, Kate, a lot of what you were saying is probably very applicable to secondary school kids, adolescents, and particularly in the home. But Kelly, would you like to add to that and also think about, you know, what can schools do, whether they've got pupils, like some schools in the UK, I don't know if in other countries they have, but whether they've got kids in school or even just supporting children who are not in school?
Yeah, so I can help in both areas of that. I'm a parent of a 19-year-old who's currently working from home. Quite an anxious experience. He's often talking about feeling guilty that he's not doing enough work, but the work's not coming through quick enough for him. He's someone who likes to be busy. And on the flip side of that, I've got my son who's 16, who was excitedly waiting to do his GCSEs and now struggling to see the purpose in revising for something that he might not be taking. In terms of that area, you know, the 16 to 19-year-olds, I think the most important thing is to give them an opportunity to speak about how they're feeling, but in a really gentle way. For those of you that have got boys out there, whether they're in your class or in your home, they're not always forthcoming with talking about their feelings. But I pick times when we're all together. So we have a routine at home where we all eat around the table and there's no social gadgets available, no TV. And that's a really good time when they're stuck there feeding their bellies. Have a chat with them, check in with them, ask them how they're feeling, see if there's any that they would like to challenge themselves on, sign up for online courses. My children at home have just set up a makeshift greenhouse and they're growing vegetables. So they're really thinking about the effects on the world and how they can be the change in the future, because I think when you've got a pause moment, it gives you the opportunity to think about, okay, let's look forward, we can't look back, but what can we do differently in the future to give us more of a sense of calm and peace? Because I think we've been so busy and caught up with life that I think we could look at this as a gift in the sense of having a space to reflect. It doesn't take away the trauma or the crisis point that we're in, but I think giving young people the opportunity to be solution focused, what can they do with this time? How can they use this purposefully? Is there something that they've always wanted to connect with? Is there a project? So my son, who was taking his GCSEs, has now decided to start an EPQ practice project, so an extended project for his A-levels. And he's working on that, and that's an experience, and he'll be able to reflect on how that's helped him, and taking that forward into doing his A-levels, that's going to be helpful. I think the first point of call, if we're thinking about families and teachers, is to just take a moment to take a breath and have a wobble. Like Adele was talking about earlier, I've had wobbles. I've found it really challenging to get into some sort of routine, but what I've done is I'm being kind to myself and I'm allowing myself to have that wobble. And I think it's okay for teachers to have that. You know, they're working with vulnerable children who they're worried about sending home. They're also worried about the impact of the children coming in who've got parents who are working as key workers. You know, I think we need to look at this as a process of grief as well. Children have lost their norm and now we have to teach them another way of being. But I do think it's an opportunity. And a tip to take away is to use the 5 ways to wellbeing. And that can be particularly helpful when you're thinking about structuring and giving that scaffolding around your day. So when we think about the 5 ways to wellbeing, we're thinking about learning. So what can our students do in class to keep learning? We've got around 20 children in our school at the moment, and we're running on a skeleton structure in terms of staff. How can we connect? So we can use creative ways to connect. We can write letters, postcards, get children to journal as well. That can be helpful. So definitely look up the 5 ways to wellbeing and start off with that as a conversation starter with your pupils, with your children at home. What can you do to practice these 5 ways in these challenging times?
Thank you very much for that, Kelly. And I think we'll come back a little bit later as well to some of the sort of practical sort of activities and things that we can do as well. And I just
Fred, I just wanted to add, because
Yeah.
we've been actually we're now in our second week. I work in a school too, and I work in the primary school, and we've been sort of now having, our school is closed basically, and the teachers are communicating with students right now. And one of the things that I've heard both things. Some of the kids are feeling like, whoa, this is way too much work that you're sending. And then some parents are like, give us more, give us more. So that's one of the things that we're finding here with doing school remotely. I think that one of the things that the kids are really enjoying, especially at the elementary school level, is hearing their teacher's voice. It sounds really simple, but that simple thing of just hearing their teacher's voice when they send those voice memos, that can be really, really powerful for the kids, and keeping that kind of connection and that sort of routine sort of going on. That's what we're trying to do in my school. And I also have teenage kids. And one of the things that I felt like I needed to do, especially for my son, it's been very disappointing because he was studying abroad and he was looking so forward to studying abroad in Florence, and that sort of had to end, is sort of like to grieve, like I think Kelly mentioned, and I call it accept the suck. So like until he accepted the suck, nothing else was going to happen. And I think that sometimes, I think as parents, as problem solvers, we sometimes want to skip that part and just kind of go to the problem solving. But I think it's really important to help our kids know that this is a crisis, that it does suck, and to kind of be able to kind of let that emotion go, or have that warble, I guess you call it. And then I think people are more effective about being able to problem solve.
Absolutely, thank you. And I think that's, there's a few things that have been touched on there by all of you. Definitely kind of going to that acceptance place that, it is really rubbish, and it is absolutely rubbish what we're going through, and that we're having to accept that, as Kate was saying, the current normal will never exist again. That is a process of grief. Our world, our way of doing things will be changing, and we might get some kind of normality back, but it'll be a different normality. And so there is a lot there to unpack. And I think that from a parent's perspective, so I have two daughters. They're both adults now. One of them was at university. She's there's an opportunity. I've got her back now until September.
Oh.
I've got my baby back. But she was planning on coming home at the end of this week, and then being home for 3 weeks for Easter, and then she was going to be back and do her exams. Our eldest daughter has actually just started a new job a week ago and moved away quite a few miles from home. So we had the that we'd been away to my mum's in Luxembourg. She'd come with us because she was literally in between the two jobs. We moved her to her new place last weekend with minimal stuff, and then we were planning next weekend on getting a van and getting all her stuff from where she lived before. And we thought, we're going to go into lockdown, we need to do this now. So my husband ended up doing 2 round trips of about 7-8 hours in 2 days, to minimize the number of people that were traveling. Both my daughters have heart conditions, so we didn't want her to be on public transport, and anyway we want a social distance for everybody else. So he drove, he got her, brought her back, so that she could get all her stuff, pack everything up. They got a van and they went back down yesterday. And I was kind of thinking, I just don't want it to go. I was saying, you're here now. If we've done it, can't you just stay here? And she said, no, because even though I'm working from home, I've got a job to do. And she said, I'm very excited about moving into my flat by myself, and I'll be fine. I'll be on my own. I'm not seeing anyone. I'll be fine. And she actually sent me the loveliest photo yesterday of her in her bed when she'd finally unpacked enough stuff to get to her bed, with her favorite cuddly toy. She'd love me for saying that. She's 22, but rainbow back, and I'm in my bed. And so actually still seeing the things that we can get excited about that are normal, like a new job, a new city, a new flat can still be exciting even when everything is rubbish around you. And my younger daughter, who has actually, let's face it, quite excited because she's passing to the 3rd year of medical school without exams. She's quite pleased about that, because the fear was they were going to make them all resit the exams in the year. And the first semester of this year was the hardest, and even the 5th years say it's the hardest of the entire degree, and she passed it very well. She was saying, I don't want to do that again. So she's very pleased, and she's actually doing all of that routine stuff because she's very good at routines. She's teaching me a lot of things about, you know, she's getting up and putting makeup in the mornings, even when she's not going anywhere. And she makes sure she spends time still working on assignments she's got to do, and then having her sort of bike ride or her walk and exercise at home and meal times and all of that kind of thing. And that's really encouraging. And a few of you have mentioned opportunity out of all of this. And I think, you know, sometimes it's hard to see opportunity when your whole world is crumbling and everything's changing. And I was just saying to somebody this morning, I waver between despair and then going, oh, actually, there's a great opportunity here. And that's a waver. I think, you know, if we look at what's happening with our brains at the moment, but it's also good to encourage ourselves and each other to see the opportunities that actually that the current normal might never come back is not necessarily a bad thing, you know. And for me, the opportunity is certainly, I've noticed that I'm connecting with a lot more people. It seems really odd when we're confined, but actually, you know, connecting a lot more face to face via things like this, rather than just sending a quick text message to someone, and making a real effort, if you haven't spoken to someone for a while, to really, you know, we say it, I think, in well-being circles, you know, ask people how they are and really mean it and listen for the answer. I'm seeing a lot more of that happening now. People asking me how I am, and people asking each other, and me asking people, and making the effort to actually go, oh, I've not spoken to this person for a while, you know, how are you? And let's talk. So yeah, Kate, you were putting your hand up there.
I just wanted to add to all of that, really. If you've struggled with being isolated, and there are behaviours that you are concerned might come back that aren't the most helpful for you, now is a good time, before it becomes too heavy, to reach out, to find a trusted friend and say, do you know, I think I might pick up a cigarette, or I might pick up an alcoholic drink, or I might dial that person that's toxic for my life. Whatever it is that you're concerned you might do, reach out now while you still can, while the communication channels are still open in your mind, and warn somebody and say, you know, can you just check in on me? If I go really quiet, that's my danger sign. Or if I start doing this, and just give yourself that chance. Don't let yourself feel too shut away from other people, because it's, for some of us, it's easy to connect, but for others, their fear response is to shut down, to go like a quiet rabbit, to hide. And that can be quite dangerous for them. So if you know yourself and you know that that's likely to happen for you, warn somebody who can metaphorically come and get you from that space, who can keep reaching out through social media to you.
That's really good advice, thank you. And I think maybe for all of us as well, to just be aware of the people that have suddenly maybe gone quiet, and just look out for those. And Adele, you wanted to add something to that?
I want to add from the point of view of special schools and the safeguarding issues around this, which is, I have to say, is an absolute minefield. And I'm aware that alternative provisions, pupil referral units, I'm sure you have the equivalent in different countries, are doing their utmost. So the main concern is we have vulnerable children who may not be particularly safe or cared for in their homes.
Yeah.
And now in this country, government advice is that they do stay at home. So our school, sorry, I've got a really big bumblebee that's coming in the greenhouse. So if there's a buzz, it's a bumblebee. Make sure that your school, or if you're an adult who perhaps knows another family with a child in this situation, I think, adding on to what Kate said, we've got vulnerable children who are now in situations where they may not be being fed properly. They may not be having the hygiene they need, let alone mental health support. Now, there are some safeguarding issues around this when it comes to things like video calls and teachers. So there are things we still need to be doing to protect ourselves, because a one-on-one, for example, Zoom conference is classed as being one-on-one in a room together. And so there are ways around that. For example, you can check in with a carer or parent at the start of the call and at the end of the call. The call can be recorded, and those kind of things. Do please check in with your safeguarding leads, and they will probably be working massively like this bumblebee. But also from a mental health point of view for these pupils, I think what you were saying, Kate, about if you know you've got a spot that might take you into your danger zone to call out. We've got kids who have that, and they don't know how to call out. They perhaps haven't got that self-awareness. And I think as teachers, there was a question about what can teachers be doing. Please make sure you've got a package around your students with educational health plans, or your vulnerable students, your pupil premium pupils, anybody who you think may not get even the basics whilst they're in self-isolation.
Thank you very much. And I know that is a concern for a lot of teachers. Yeah, Kelly.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Adele was saying. What we've done is we have a rota of staff. So there's 3 members in our pastoral team. We are calling them parents regularly, and also sending newsletters home to our families and also to our pupils. You've got that connect well, and sending postcards home to our vulnerable pupils with personal notes on there for them. But yeah, it's a really tricky minefield, and you want to see them children, because so often we know that our vulnerable children are struggling by how they appear, both physically and emotionally, and in these times we're unable to do that. But I think it's really being on top of doing them regular check-ins, making them calls home. And it may even be that you would have to possibly go around to that person's house at the safe distance and just knock to see that everything's okay. And you would use your normal safeguarding procedures in terms of calling social care, reporting any concerns. But yeah, it's really challenging times. What we've done in our schools, we have vouchers, so our families, vulnerable families, are able to come and get them vouchers to feed their children as well at these times.
Thank you. And actually that kind of leads me to another question, and I'll come to Karen first on this one, with your psychologist hat on, really, to kind of, because there's a lot of anxiety, I think, for teachers as well, particularly because they're trying to juggle so many things. So we've touched on before that, you know, teachers in schools that are having to still go into school and teach children or look after children. They might be concerned about the fact that they've got children in school who are children of key workers, such as themselves, and therefore, you know, particularly children of medical personnel, etc., who might get more exposure to the virus, and therefore there is a very real physical kind of fear and anxiety around the dangers that they might themselves be exposed to and the dangers they might expose their families to when they come home. There is the anxiety, as we were talking about there, Adele and Kelly, about, you know, how do we protect children who are vulnerable when we haven't got them safely in school to do that. There are anxieties about having to learn new technology, about how do we communicate in ways that we're not used to communicating? How do we teach in ways that we're not used to teaching? So there's a lot there. And on top of all of that, of course, a lot of the teachers are parents themselves, not to mention that every teacher is also a human being, and therefore this crisis, like everybody else, is in a very personal way as well. So is there anything, if we start with you, Karen?
Yes. Well, I would say, first of all, I find it interesting in the United States. I'm not sure of all states, but I think it's now 48, but I think almost all states, the schools are closed. So there is no longer completely. There are no longer teachers, you know, with kids. What we do have, though, which is interesting, like even in my school district, of like first responders. So there are aides who are working with first responder kids because those parents have to go to work. They're the nurses and things like that. So it's kind of still the same thing, you know, those aides have to, and it's sort of like, you know, that's the only way they get paid. And so there's also this economic kind of anxiety that's going on, because really in New York, at least, things have completely been shut down. And, you know, hairdressers, nail salons, all those things, restaurants, except for takeout, those have been gone. And so there's also a lot of economic anxiety. I'm seeing. The other thing I'm seeing is, like you said, with technology, what's happening a lot for our teachers is that all of a sudden they're really going to have to get really good at Google Hangouts and, you know, Seesaw and things that they're not familiar with. And for some teachers also, they have their own kids at home. So they're trying to make lessons, and they're also trying to deal with their own kids. And a lot of times also, as I said, it's either like, you know, feast or famine. So there's like so much work, and a lot of little kids, especially, they really can't do this independently. So I think people are really kind of being pulled in lots of different directions. And I think, like some people had said before, I think it's really important to kind of take a breath and like to recognize, and I always say, like, everyone's doing the best they can. The other thing that has happened also in the United States is that some of the legal requirements about doing teletherapy have been completely lessened. So there were things like you couldn't do, like FaceTime or things like that, but that no longer exists now because they just want to make sure that we are doing right by our clients. So those things have sort of made things a little bit easier. So I think like kind of remembering that everyone, this is new territory, we're all doing our best, and to take a breath about that. And as I said, like kind of take it day by day, because the thing is always shifting.
Thank you very much, Karen. Anna.
Yeah, I'd just like to come in and sort of highlight it, that it's really, really important from a line manager perspective to be creating those opportunities for your team to celebrate success together. And success doesn't mean something big. It doesn't have to be a really noticeable, significant event. It can be something just really, really tiny. Just for instance, maybe you've had a better conversation with a pupil, maybe you've managed to have more of a connection with a parent, something that is really, really small, but it's about separating that time in order to do that. So that's a specific opportunity to celebrate success. But actually, in addition to that, and actually this can be translated into home as well, so celebrating success within your family. The separate to that is actually using as many frequent opportunities as you can to give positive feedback. And this isn't just generalized feedback. This is about feedback that is very specific to the individual. So what is it that that individual did? And how did that make a difference to something that was an objective at work or something that was really important at home? And I mean, I'm talking really, really frequently, like a number of times during the day. Very often during my consultations with employees, they will, I'll say to them, oh, when did you receive any positive feedback? And they just laugh. They laugh at me. They say, well, we don't get anything. So, yeah. And now we're in a situation where actually I'm asking people not just to do it regularly, but to really up that regularity as well. But it is so, so important to do that.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think what's really useful in that context is to also look at perhaps the language of strengths and character strengths. I find that really useful. Using very specific feedback. If people are not familiar with that, if you go to the VIA Character Institute, that's viacharacter.org, you can see a lot of information there about 24 character strengths that research has shown are pretty much present in everybody, no matter where we are in the world, and in terms of age, gender, religion, culture, etc. And we can use those as a really good hook to hang those kind of feedback pieces on. So whether it's with a colleague that's working remotely, or whether it's with a family member, or whether it's with a student, you can say things like, you've shown the character strength of hope there when you were talking. Are you all right, Kate? It always looks like you're falling over.
Not being my friend today.
You're doing really well. You're doing well with all the challenges.
With my 7-year-old on the left-hand side of the screen. You can't see me doing. I'm multitasking really bad.
Brilliant. And may I just say, using the language of strengths, Kate, to demonstrate what I was just saying, that you are showing incredible creativity there.
Yeah.
Use the technology in the best possible way to multitask and to still be here, even throwing challenges your way. So yes, it's about using that kind of language. If you use the language of strengths, you're constantly reinforcing positively the strengths that people are showing, which then reminds them that they have those strengths that they can use in the situation to get them through the challenge. But it's also giving them very specific feedback about what they're doing that is really positive. So Kate, maybe you can add something to that as well, particularly with your experience of dealing with crisis situations as well.
One of the things that's a lovely leveler in a situation like this, so our young people are looking to us for the answers. We don't necessarily have them. The rug has been pulled out from underneath us as well. So for teachers to say to their students, none of this is exactly as it should be. We're muddling through this together, asking them what can they bring that's going to make them feel safe? We're like, what can you bring to the table? Beginning to co-create some solutions together, and also in the family home. You know, how are we going to divide up all the jobs that need to be done by all of the people who are here? And let's learn to do some new things together. I've got to learn in my role as a parent how to fill time indoors. We're an outdoors family. So I'm having to learn new tricks. And so I'm talking through that process with my daughter. I'm saying to her, this is really challenging me being stuck inside. And it's making me a bit grumpy. Like, how can we manage this together? So modeling what it is to learn how to do new things, making those invisible processes that are going on. I'm practicing this. I don't like it yet, but it is getting easier. Saying that stuff out loud is really important because it makes us feel safe that we're in this together. It's a safe space to make mistakes in. It's a safe space to celebrate successes in. You know, I did the washing all by myself, or my daughter can hang out the washing for me. She can make pancakes by herself. She's learning to be independent in that space. So that on switch that we wish young people would find sometimes, instead of waiting for us to give them the answers, this is a perfect opportunity for us to guide them towards finding it.
That's brilliant. I like the idea of making the invisible processes visible. Thank you very much, Kate.
I think this could also be something for teachers that we could really do to support parents and carers. I mean, in the UK, homeschooling hasn't been that long yet, but I think we're getting a lot of panic coming from parents and carers who are not used to homeschooling, feeling like the child should have a first-class honours degree by now, and actually maybe using some of the language and scripts that you were saying, Kate. Actually, as teachers, we can do that for parents and carers because we're used to that. We're used to, you know, supporting trainee teachers or new members of staff, and allowing our kind of industry to actually support those parents and carers who are kind of a little bit in lieu of our job at the minute. I think that would be really helpful for parents and carers right now.
Thank you. I think so. And I think that leads quite nicely onto, you know, I see a lot of parents and carers who are really concerned, as you know, they should have a first-class honours degree by now. It's kind of, am I doing enough? Should I be doing 5 hours of teaching a day? And should I be sitting at a table doing maths lessons? And all of that kind of thing, and actually remembering that there are so many learning opportunities in any day, and that if you actually talk to people who homeschool their children regularly, that actually they don't spend an awful lot of time sitting at a table giving lessons, but that they're learning through everyday activities like baking, like even watching the telly, but talking about everyday stuff that happens and bringing in science and maths and history and geography and all of that in. And when there's a world pandemic going on, my goodness, isn't there an opportunity to talk about all of those things? So Karen, yes.
Yeah, I was just saying, one of the feedback we also got from parents after a week of doing this is that they were looking for resources that don't have to do with the computer. They really were looking for us, like, what can we do with our kids, like baking or activities like that. So I think that, you know, it's, you take these things for granted, but again, I think that those things and giving parents actual resources that they can do that have nothing to do with, like, you know, a lesson or stuff like that can be incredibly helpful.
Brilliant. Thank you. Kelly, you wanted to add something to that?
Yeah, I spoke earlier on my Twitter account about flipping the narrative on home learning to home living. I think I talked about opportunities earlier, but our children have got the biggest life lesson ever, which is a lesson on resilience, coping with a tragic situation. We don't know if some of our children are going to lose loved ones. That's how serious the matter is. But I think if we strip back the need to feel that we're teaching our children really detailed lessons from detailed lesson plans, and actually think about what life skills do our children need going forward. What can we give them as a gift today to help them cope with adversity, cope with change, and build resilience? And I think it's really important to capture our children's voice on that and our young people's voice. What do you need in these unsettling times to feel better? If you were to rate how you feel feel right now, and do that on a scale of 1 to 13. So often when we do a scale of 1 to 10, we naturally sit at 7. So when we ask children to rate 1 to 13, that, you know, that sliding scale seems to change, and do that frequently, and then ask them what they need to be, what they need to do, or what they need to happen, or what help they need to be the next notch up. I think it's really important that we teach our children to check in with themselves regularly, and to be able to find ways to self-soothe and to regulate their emotions and connect with all the things that they probably haven't connected with for a long time. My son, who's 16, he's got a wardrobe full of amazing toys, stuff that we've got in for Christmas. He's never really used it. I've said to him, you know, no tech time today, let's go through the wardrobe, see what you can play with. He's playing with Lego, he's connecting with toys that he hasn't done. So I think it's about life skills and stripping back. I think technology is fantastic in these times, but what I'm hearing from parents is they're going on to show my homework and the system's crashing, then they're going into a mad panic. So always have a backup plan and have a variety of chunks of your day that are set aside: time in the garden, time cooking, time planning what the day is going to look like, planning for tomorrow, and maybe not thinking too far ahead because things are changing so quickly. Sit in the day that you're in and only plan for the next day rather than the next week, the next month. I think what we all need to get better at is not procrastinating, thinking of what's going to be the worst case scenario. And I'm talking to myself when I say that. And I think it, you know, going back to just breathing and just thinking, what can we do right now to shift this anxious energy, this fear that we're feeling?
And actually that links a little bit as well into sort of the practice of mindfulness, and really, you know, in a time like this, it is natural to start ruminating over lost on one hand, and on the other hand, all the things that might happen and go wrong. And that's very much where I was yesterday, saying goodbye to my, where my mind was going was just horrific. But actually, if you bring yourself back to, well, right now, I'm here and I'm okay. I can do X, Y, and Z in my house, and that's fine. You know, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but right now I'm absolutely fine. And just bringing that back, and through breathing as well. And of course, you know, we've talked about going offline, but if people want resources online, there's plenty of apps, there's plenty of videos that are there free that show you how to do simple breathing meditations, how to bring yourself back into the moment, to just calm that over rumination down. And that can be particularly useful if you haven't done an awful lot of physical stuff during the day, because, you know, some people, I look at particularly big cities, and I look at my family and friends in Italy who all live in flats where they can't go out into a garden, you know, and they're stuck in a very small confined space, so they're very limited on what they can do physically. It gets very difficult then to actually go to sleep at night sometimes, because your brain's ruminating and you're tired. And so doing something like bringing yourself back down through a meditation, I'll come to you in a second, Anna, and also things like writing down 3 good things at the end of the day to calm your mind and focus on positives, can be really good evidence-based things that we know work. And even if you've never tried them before, now is a good time to just start trying them. You can't really do it wrong, so just try it and bring your mind back. And Anna, you wanted to add something to that as well?
Yeah, thank you. The government advice on exercising is actually that we must exercise daily outside only once. I'm an avid exerciser. I'm a triathlete, so I exercise all the time. So that once is a bit of a to me. You know, I'd go out to cycling in the morning and then I'd walk at lunchtime. So I'm like, oh no, I've done my cycle. So actually, you know, all these stress hormones that are flying around, doing flight or fright, we can still use them. We can still go outside. You know, 5 minutes is better than no minutes. 10 minutes is better than 5 minutes. You know, if you feel you don't have time, honestly, just 5 minutes, getting out, doing a quick power walk. If you can manage to do a bit of a run, absolutely awesome, fantastic. And it's the regularity of doing that. So yeah, daily is brilliant.
I would add to that, and I think I'm so glad that we are lucky enough that at the moment, at least in the UK, the advice is still to get outside. to walk, and I was trying to get outside anyway most days because I like going for a walk, but actually since it's suddenly, you know, you're only allowed to do it once a day, I'm not missing my walk today. I'm going out no matter what, you know. It's become really important, but I'm also very conscious that there may be people watching and listening that actually literally are not allowed. I saw a video yesterday of a woman putting her dog out through the window. This dog hanging by its lead to go and do its business outside, and then lifting it back up by its lead. And literally in Italy, and I'm sure it's the same in other countries around the world, you know, where people are not allowed to leave their flats or their homes. If they're lucky enough to have a garden, they can. If they have a balcony, they can get onto the balcony, but that's it. And I think the message about exercise is still important. If you can't get outside, do movement inside your flat. I saw a fantastic thing. Apparently there was somebody in France that ran a marathon on his balcony or something. So he just did it, and my colleague Liz Wright, she's been inspired by this, and in order to avoid going out into the public as much as possible, she's doing a mile in her garden every day, and it's not a big garden.
Amazing.
So she just goes and walks all in the garden and does a mile. If you don't have a garden and you don't have a balcony, I would say open the windows to get fresh air into your home. And do, you know, if you've got YouTube or anything like that where you can watch exercise videos, or just march on the spot, or walk up and down in your room, or if you've got weights, do those, or get a couple of cans of food and lift those, but move, because otherwise you won't sleep and your mind will go to places that are not very pleasant. I think we need to make sure that we do move, even if we're not used to doing an awful lot.
I think as well, that's another thing that as teachers, when we do have the contact with our young people, that could be today's lesson, couldn't it? You know, that we're advocating for that as well.
Absolutely. Now I'm conscious of time. We've got 5 minutes left. So if we do a quick fire round of either one last piece of advice or guidance or support that you want to give to our teachers, parents, carers, and of course all the children that they look after, or if you have a particular resource that you would like to let people know about, then now's the time to do it. And if it is a resource with a link, then after you've said what it is, type it into the chat if you've got YouTube there, or send it to me and I'll make sure that I share it on the YouTube feed afterwards once it's gone out. So one resource, one tip, a final word from everybody. If we start with you, Kate.
So I think my main tip is be kind to yourself. Whatever it is that makes you feel safe and calm, do that until it opens up into most of your day. And if you've got time that you need to fill, and young people whose time you need to fill, I've made a couple of courses already, and I'm in the middle of making one on self-directed learning for the uninitiated. So I will send all of the links to Fred, because I can't do it because I'm holding my phone with one hand. So I'll send all of the links. Be kind to yourselves.
Thank you very much, Kate. And yes, I'll put those links into the description in the YouTube, and then I'll also put them into the description on the forflourishingsake.com podcast episode page as well. So anything that you want to send me to add, I'll add those. Karen, final words from you.
Yeah, so two things. First of all, I want to share a tip that I heard or I saw from Dr. Angela Duckworth. She talks about washing hands. We all know we have to wash our hands. We need to wash our hands for 20 seconds. But what she added, which I really like and I have been doing, is while you're washing your hands, to think about the people that you are grateful for in your life. And use that time to think about those people and actually make sure to savor it and do it that way for 20 seconds. So that's my tip. The other thing I would want to share with people is I have a wellness club and we're doing wellness remote. So I'm happy, Fred, to send you some of that information. If people are wellness is, we have KFG, which is kindness, flexibility, and grit. Nobody does character better than Harrison Avenue, and we have a wellness club, and I'm happy to share with you our wellness remote, which focuses on those concepts and then has physical activities that people can do. So it ties in that exercise.
Thank you. Fantastic. Anna.
Hi, so this is a tip for employers. So your employees, you're probably demanding that they do work very, very quickly and that they do work very, very rapidly. We're all trying to take on new stuff and new learning. That is completely can be exhausting emotionally and cognitively. So I suggest that you give your employees occasions of stepping out of that hot zone and moving back into something that is really very boring and slow and routine. It will give their brain time to refresh, and then they'll be able to go back into that fast-paced work and be more efficient and effective. What I can do as well is that I can assess your employees from that point of view of where they are at that at-risk status because of their medical conditions or because of their treatments that they're on. And I will send my link to Fred to pass it down to you all.
Thank you very much. And Kelly.
Hi, I just want to remind people that this is the situation we're in now and it's not going to be forever, and that we are in it together. So it's really important that we reach out to others at this difficult time. And like we spoke about earlier, notice the people that have suddenly gone quiet. We need to think about the people who have mental health needs or may not have never had them and may be finding that they've got these symptoms now, so making sure we reach out to others. In terms of resources, I'm going to be creating a regular newsletter with Andrew Cowley on our Twitter account at Mind Work Matters and Healthy Toolkit, and we're going to be doing that weekly with lots of resources. Also check out Education support for teacher wellbeing. They've got lots of resources on there, and the Anna Freud Centre for Pupil Wellbeing at this difficult time.
If you want to send me those links, I
will do
those. Thank you very much. And Adele.
I got some great advice from a colleague today. I was having a wobble. My partner, my fiance, is stuck in a different country to me, and the borders. I went to book a flight to try and get out there, and I'd missed it by 4 hours, and we don't know when we're going to see each other again. And I was having a wobble about that earlier, and I was thinking, you know, if only I hadn't waited for the message about the school closure before I tried to book that flight, you know. And there was all those kind of head things. And my colleague said to me, and this has really helped, he said, but we're in one of those situations where it's not that you've done the right or wrong thing, there is actually no right or wrong thing. And that really appeased my mind that, like you were saying, Kelly, we are where we are now. So there is no right or wrong thing. We're doing our best.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. That's a really useful reminder. And I would just like to finish by saying we are having a period that for many of us means that there's a lot of downtime that perhaps we're not used to. I know for a lot of people, there's a lot of running around as well of trying to sort of organize. Once we're organizing all of that, there will be these pockets of downtime, and during those pockets of downtime we can kind of ruminate. And what I would say is maybe, other than what we've already mentioned, you know, use that time to connect, try to reach out to people you haven't spoken to for a while, take it as an opportunity to connect with people, but also take it as an opportunity, if you can, to savor moments. Because I think what is interesting is that, particularly when we look at children, if we manage to find a way to make this not so much scary, but just new and different and exciting, then actually they might come away from this with amazing memories of the things they did with their parents and carers and even their teachers that they never thought they were going to do, because everything was different and it was exciting. It wasn't boring anymore. They were doing things that they'd never done before. And we have an opportunity to make memories for ourselves and for the people we care about. And I think, you know, I know that as a mom, I have a lot of regrets about having worked very, very hard when my kids were little and not having spent as much time as I would have liked to spend with them. And so now I'm thinking, well, I've got an opportunity to get some of that back in a different way, even though one of them's not at home with me, but by having video calls with her and with with Hannah, who's at home, just spending a bit more time with her that we didn't think we were going to get to spend with each other at this point in time, which is lovely. I know that for a lot of people there's separation, but again, we can find, luckily we have technology that years ago didn't exist, that allows us to connect and use that as much as you possibly can. But really, even on your own, savouring moments. So if you're having a meal, really savour that meal. You know, if you're watching something on telly, then really just put the phone away and don't do what a lot of us do, which is to text and message and do lots of other things. You know, I'm having this time to just watch this and enjoy it. A great way to do that, incidentally, I'm watching series, the great gripping show on Netflix called Elite, which is fantastic, very, very gripping. But what I found is, because it's a Spanish show, and although I've a bit of Spanish, they speak very fast and lots of teenage colloquialisms that I just cannot follow, and they get very angry and there's murders happening, and there's no way I could follow that just by listening. So watch something in a different language with subtitles. Because you cannot look at your phone or do anything else. You have to be completely mindfully in that moment to actually understand what's going on. So that's my parting advice to you all at this point. So I just want to say thank you all for taking the time this afternoon to come in and share your advice and your guidance and your support for everybody that's out there doing the best that they can, because that's all that you can do at the moment. So thank you so, so much for taking the time out of doing the best that you can, and coming here to share everything that you know, everything that you're trying, and everything that you've been experiencing yourselves as well. Thank you for sharing so openly, and I hope that it's really helped a lot of people, not just today, but because we'll share this beyond today, that it's going to help a lot of people as well over time. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fred, for putting together.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.